All right, ladies and gents, sorry for keeping you waiting for a little bit longer than expected. How's everybody doing this morning? Ready to rock and roll?
Woo!
Okay, yeah, Much, it's day 3. You're allowed to be tired, it's okay. Lots of information to take in at Fame Week, and I hope that you guys are going to enjoy today's session. I can guarantee that today we probably have some of the most passionate people on the stage around this particular topic. Our business really is trying to focus on helping the traditional television spaces think digital as part of the mix when it comes to creating TV properties. Will apply the same to film knowledge as well too. The world of social media really does feel like this kind of add-on. Once things have already been done, it's like, oh damn, we need to be on social. And so it's seen as a sort of marketing channel to the TV and film properties. And recently we've been working quite closely with, and with their permission, I'm going to share some case studies with you today with the Prime Media Studios team. We've been working on their TV properties, on the digital elements. And even in companies that are stepping into this world for the first time are still finding that their internal systems and structures are not built around thinking how to incorporate digital with the traditional sort of projects that are being put together. So hopefully by the end of today's session, we'll be able to give you a clear sense of what role social media particularly, and I don't mean social media, I mean like social media, plays in the traditional marketing mix, okay? And they have real commercial value, there's real commercial ability within it, and I think strategic as well too. Our business is really not trying to be social media. We really are trying to focus our energy on really seeing how social media fits into the business mix of what you create. And so today it's going to be new concepts, things that might sound like conversations you haven't had before, and I'm even willing to fight you on things. Not physically, but mentally and psychologically we'll fight each other today, because I do know that the challenge, I've seen that at all the big stages that I've been attending here through Fame Week. No, social is such a small thing in our grand picture. It's not the biggest priority for us right now. We'll fit it into the background, or that's an easy, one person can just do it and we'll just like be on social, and it's not reliable. We don't believe that social media information is reliable, and it's just not part of the mix, right? So today we're going to fight that voice in the room, not because we have anything to gain from it, but because I genuinely do believe that social media can have a seat at the table that can generate real business value for companies in the distribution space. So my name is Danilo. I run the business this side. Alex is our operations manager, and Raeesa is a content strategist. And the three of us are going to talk you through what we believe the role of social media should play in TV and film projects, particularly in South Africa, who are really struggling to pioneer. It's time for us to start stepping this into the limelight. Okay. So raise your hand if you are a film or in the producing side of film production. Okay, raise your hand if you're a creative. Okay. Raise your hand if you're in digital. Okay, all right. Okay, a few of you in the room so far. I'm not going to harp on this too much, but this is the foundation of what I'm trying to get to today, is that social media is seen as marketing, and the social media, either agencies or people in-house in the production space, or in, for example, the broadcaster space, reports to the marketing team. Raise your hand if you've, no, actually, never mind. I know the answer is yes. Marketing teams are always incredibly overwhelmed, and because they're always incredibly overwhelmed, they default to, you do it, I don't know, can't care, can't keep going. And so social is constantly trying to fight a battle against the wrong people who just don't have the energy all the time, or are not interested in actually thinking of it as a business. They see it as a channel, and when times get tough, what is their thing? Cut cost as much as we can, make things as cheap as possible, spread the load as far as we can. And so social media generally, or the digital aspects of film and TV properties, are fobbed off onto the marketing side of the business, and therefore it's missing all of its opportunity to commercialize, mine data, and do all the real business values that I believe social and digital can do. So social media is not just marketing for TV and film. Now, the big problem that we've seen, obviously, is that TV and film producers, as well as the broadcasters, they are not exempt from this problem, generally have social media in that marketing box and have it as part of a sort of, yeah, like again, the marketing team. We now have sold the property, we found the sponsors for it, we've got the broadcaster for it, it's all being broadcast out there. That's now the commercial model. Now we need to spend as little as possible to get as much marketing as we can to get more people to watch the show. That's currently how it is seen and known, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Social media does fulfill a marketing function for you. It can help people discover content and discover the value of the shows that you're broadcasting or the films that you're putting out into the market, and there's no reason it can't do that. But there is so much more that social should be doing for you. And my colleague Raeesa is going to be talking you through some local and global case studies of film productions, TV shows that are doing it really well. We're also going to try and use what everybody knows as the Barbie case study. Everybody knows how big the marketing budget was for Barbie and what they did. But as you can clearly see, social and digital and trend and zeitgeist all formed a big part of what made Barbie the success that it is today. It wasn't just a film that was shot and then distributed and then one or two posts went out on social media to talk about it. They really incorporated and thought about the business of trends and digital and social platforms as part of that mix, and we'll kind of share some of the gleaned insights from that with you today. Our company is a social video specialist business. We specialize in all of the social platforms that prioritize video. That's your YouTube channels, your TikTok accounts, and your Instagram accounts. In fact, most of social media today is video. It's video first. And that's a problem that we addressed 2 days ago at another session we ran about trying to understand how much of social has in fact become video, and the sort of static and 2D approach of creating doesn't exist anymore. You can't have one social media manager in your company doing everything, designing everything, making reels, making TikToks, and trending, and going viral, and writing the copy, and. It doesn't work that way anymore. There's quite a lot of emphasis that needs to be made on creating video content on a consistent basis, because all the platforms have moved to video, or the platforms moved to video because all the audiences are demanding video content. And so we're in a space where things are changing rapidly, and we need to move along with it as well too. Our company helps people do that, and I think, as I've mentioned, the case study we're going to be using today for the projects we're working on is with the Prime Media Studios team, and we do thank them for the permission to be able to share some data with you today of their 2 TV properties, The Masked Singer and Deal or No Deal South Africa, and some of the insights that we've gleaned about the role social media can play in that. So what can social media do for me in my TV and film projects that I'm creating? And I'm going to cover 4 aspects that really help you, the creatives. I'm going to focus on really this omni-channel world. I'll explain that to you in a bit. To all of the producers and the people that are here from the sort of money side of the business of film and TV production and broadcast, let's talk about insights on the content itself, the more qualitative data that you can get from TV properties, the data aspects of gathering first, second, and third party data through social media, and the final one is revenue generation. And I'll talk you through how I believe we can do this as an industry to incorporate it and give it a different seat at the table. So let's start with those. I know this is a very text-heavy slide, so don't worry about looking at that. I promise you we're quite a visually appealing team. I promise you can look at us, it's all good. But I'll talk you through those individually. So the first one that I mentioned was about insights. Now, most of you who know about broadcasting television know that you will always get reports from your broadcasters quite soon after the broadcast about how the show was doing, how many people were watching that show. And obviously you know the answer, but anyone want to give me the insight as to how that data is gathered? Like how does the SABC know how many people are watching your show? Anyone want to raise their hand and take a stab at it? Wow. Anybody know? Yes, sir? Sampling, and how does that work? How many people are in a sample, for example, out of interest? Do you know? 60, 600. It's more like 10,000, but around that number, 10,000 people have little boxes on their televisions, and then they're monitoring what their performance looks like, and they extrapolate that 10,000 to the 26 million that are watching in the country to determine how many people are watching. It's not accurate data, but it is data. The problem is it's only quantitative data. It tells you how many people watched. And can you determine, for example, sentiment of a show through the number of people who are watching, extrapolated at that kind of scale? The answer is probably not really, but it's the most accurate data we have available to ourselves, and it gets to us instantly, and it helps makes us feel good. But it doesn't tell us answers about what are people watching instead of the show. Why don't they like the show? What do they like about the show? What should we do more of? What shouldn't we do more of? And so social media provides you with an instant way to be able to understand sentiment of shows. We use this method for like gathering insights about television and film products, particularly with a show like Deal or No Deal, which is broadcasting every single day, and they have a production cycle of about 6 months for the full year of episodes to be produced. We were able to physically change the show through the insights we were gathering from social media, or through the issues that we had seen within the show. We could address those in the social media world by giving people insights and information to make watching easier. For example, I think my colleague will be talking through some of these ideas and how they all worked, but some issues she was going to cover is things like the suit of the host. Ironically, everyone hated it, and they were like, why is he wearing the same outfit every single day? Like, is there no way to like vary it up? Raeesa will give you some insights about what we did with that and how we managed to change sentiment about that. The second issue was, and you wouldn't have known this until the show started broadcasting, and then it's a little bit too late, luckily for social, that because the show was being shot in the Western Cape and we were celebrating these people who were winning on the show, they were noting that everybody on the show was from the Western Cape and Xhosa speaking. They were like, where's the representation? Where's other races? Where's other languages being represented on the show? And the production company were unaware. They just thought like people are going to be people on the show and everyone's going to win and we'll all be grateful. But through the recognition of this repetition online, we realized we could start to, really think about how to change the way the show is broadcast. Think about how we select contestants, do call to actions on social media to get more diverse contestants on the show and address those concerns. So social media gets to provide you with a lot more qualitative insight into the productions that you're putting forward so that you can make better decisions as production companies and ensure that you're producing content that people actually want to see and really help you make decisions in the content that you create. The second one that I wanted to note was about data mining, right? This sounds like a very mean thing, but you guys need to really wake up and smell the coffee. Your data is being mined on a daily basis. We know what you're doing, we know where you are, we know how old you are, we know what you're interested in, we know what you're browsing on your unknown browsers, we know what accounts you're following. Everyone knows this information about you already. Social media is free because you are the product. We are selling you to other people. Okay. Now, although that sounds really hectic, that's not what we do. Our job is to think about, okay, you now are a TV show, you broadcast for 24 minutes, 48 minutes, once a week or every day or whatever it might be. After that broadcast, what relationship do you have with that viewer? Zero. You've got zero relationship with them, unless you have a social media presence. If you have a social media presence, you can start building a community around this TV show that you can now speak to beyond the broadcast. You can start having conversations with people beyond the broadcast. You could even take their data and their information and sell that to other people beyond the broadcast. If you do not think about social media as part of your audience gathering mechanism, you really only have that 24 minutes to speak to your audience. Thereafterwards, they are no longer yours. They are somebody else's to speak to. And so if you really think about digital and social as part of the business model of running TV and film projects, you can gather audiences and start mining their data. What I mean by mining data, I mean it through consent and through typical poppy circumstances. I'm not talking about the sort of meta without your knowledge, we're selling you to databases across the world. We're talking about consent. I'm thinking of the obvious mechanisms of running basic competitions. Fill out our inquiry form and you could win a trip for 2 or whatever it is. Come to the premiere, fill out this form. Get people to give you their consent, to gather their email addresses, for example. And now you can start building a database of audiences that are in your target customer that you're trying to speak to for your projects. Now, for example, next time you have another property, you can start emailing those people. You can send them SMSs to be reminded. You can have them part of a database that you can share with other broadcasters. You can start to build an army around the content that you create to be able to sell to and work with and encourage to consume more content of yours down the line. The other thing that you get to know is about the interests of your target customer. So basic features on platforms that you can see on social would be things like polls, trying to understand what people like and don't like, get them to understand more so that if you do go into a season 2 or a season 3 of projects, the insight that you can gather from audiences help you make better business decisions. Now, those of you that sit in the sort of C-suite or you guys are the big producers and you don't really deal with this kind of stuff, it's not your day-to-day, how many times has your social media manager or your agency ever come to you after every episode and given you insights about the audience on that show? The answer is very, very often from who I've spoken to has been very little. Social media goes to the marketing team, send me the marketing reports, I'll read it once a quarter and then off we go. Is it going fine? Is it not going fine? That's all I want to know. Social media gets to give you a lot more insights into the show itself. Now we do two things. The one is a community management report. What is the sentiment of what people are saying? Even when I'm not in the room, if it's not a tweet that I've put out, what are people saying on Twitter about us? What are people saying in community groups on Facebook about us? What are people saying in the comment section about the shows? That information is incredibly valuable to the business managers of the property because they get to have those conversations with the broadcasters, with their business partners, with sponsors. That kind of data and insight is incredibly valuable to C-suite. It's not just marketing. The third for the creatives is about creating an omni-channel world. Now, Alex will cover more of this in a trans-media storytelling section, but I will say that for the creative industry, you know how frustrating it is to take all of your ideas and fit them into just that 24 minutes. There's so much footage that ends on the cutting floor. There's so many opportunities for other stories to be told that just don't make it to broadcast, or there's no budget for it or whatever. Having a good social media presence, for example, allows you to tell the story in a much broader context. It allows you to take this single concept that you have that broadcasts for a set period of time and build a world around it. So we'll use some examples. Raeesa will be able to share some of those with you today about how that can be thought about. But for a show like The Masked Singer, for example, only in the episode do you get to see them in their mask, you see them perform, you see the judges talk about them, and then maybe they'll be revealed in that episode. But where do you get to find out how it felt to be underneath the mask? Where's the BTS, the behind-the-scenes content? How do you know how that celebrity thinks about the other stars as well too? The social media world allows you to be able to create content beyond just the broadcast to start talking about the world of your content that you're creating. And if you can create that kind of world, you can again amass an audience that are interested in something just beyond that 24 minutes or 48 minutes. Social media really gets to help you tell the bigger story. Lastly, monetization. Now, it's a challenge we're facing currently with production companies and general people who are selling to, obviously, there's this weird rat race of need to get a broadcaster. To get a broadcaster, I need a concept. To get a concept, I need a sponsor. All these things need to come together at once to get going. The minute I get the sponsor to cover the AFP or whatever it is for the cost of that show itself or the broadcaster's fee, my job ends there. I'm now sold. I'm now done. And what we're trying to encourage teams to do is to start incorporating sales potential for you in the social media world as well too. So for example, we know that certain series on the YouTube channels of these two TV shows or certain sort of moments that are exclusive to this TV show that only live on social are such sellable properties. It's so easy to go to the same sponsor who's already sponsored the TV show or a peripheral sponsor and say, we know the series is going to do really well. We know that on digital, here's some areas that you can also sponsor. Add another 100, 200, 500 million rand to this project, and you can have this space as well too. They can be the people who are sponsoring these competitions that are mining the data. All the brands who sponsor TV shows need databases. They need to start selling their marketing to these people on an ongoing basis. They think that it's valuable, sort of above the line, just doing one TV show for those 24 minutes, but afterwards, how do I speak to these people who watch the show? If I can gather their data, get the email addresses, I can start adding them to my email marketing lists, to my Google advertising lists, to my Facebook marketing lists, and I can retarget and re-engage these audiences that engage me in a once-off manner on a TV show. That's something that you should be selling to the sponsors as part of the package, not just the 24 or 48 minutes of their airtime that they'll be getting from the TV show itself. Think about adding production or these digital elements to the sale itself and incorporate things like influencers, Twitter armies, because the issue that you're facing is your own problem. You're often selling digital or doing digital things after the fact now that there's no more budget. Now no one's watching the show, we need influencers. Get me a batch of influencers. Okay, how much are you going to pay them? We've got no budget. They must just be excited by the show. We're not excited about the show. We don't care about you. We have to make money. And if you haven't thought about it, obviously it's going to come out of your pocket. And if you have thought about it, get it to come out of your sponsors' pockets. Because they can see the value in getting access to these audiences and having themselves be associated with this. And so the digital elements of the sale need to be incorporated. And I understand it's not something that comes naturally or easy to the C-suite executive producers who are selling this to sponsors. They know TV. They don't know digital. So invite the digital teams into those sessions. Ask them to make packages for you. Ask them to think about what can we sell digitally? How can we prove success? What are the KPIs? They do know the stuff and they are banging down your doors to be given a seat at the table. Just give it to them. They'll show you how this works and they'll generate you extra revenue. But beyond the sale to sponsors of monetization of digital content, platforms like YouTube, for example, generate revenue passively. A show like The Masked Singer, and I'm really sorry, I should have done this directly before the session, but The Masked Singer itself, we released a full episode on YouTube, for example. Raeesa and Aleksandra then will be able to touch on the stories of how that impacted the digital presence. But that show is generating, I'm not talking about 400 or 500 Rand in revenue. I'm talking about 30, 40, 50, 60,000 Rand in terms of just YouTube revenue for ads appearing on that piece of video that lived on their YouTube channel. That money is useful. It'll pay somebody's salary. It'll diminish the debt. It'll pay somebody else. There is money to be made in distributing content effectively on platforms like YouTube. Facebook as well, if you've got global distribution, you can also run advertising on. And so digital is not just a marketing tactic. It can generate revenue for you. It can help you mine the data of the audiences who are watching the shows that you are currently on so that you can resell to those people. It can help you tell a trans story, a story beyond the story that you're selling on television or in the film studios. And lastly, but not least, it is the one that can help you get insights about the show. What do people feel? What should we create? What is the sentiment? And I heard somebody say previously, and I've seen this in producers' offices as well too, is like, oh, it's just one person's opinion, we don't need to make sense of it. I get that. There are sometimes you don't need one person's opinion to make a big change to your production. If you start to see trends in conversation happening, your job is to listen to that information and make active changes to improve it. It is real people who are watching your shows. It's you and I who are on social, who took the guts to say, I don't like this, or I don't like that suit. This is great data. Why aren't we using it to make better decisions? So social media is not marketing alone. It fulfills a marketing function, but social media can do a lot more for your businesses in the film and TV space, and the world is doing it, we're just not doing it here. And it's really important for us to start seeing how we can do that a bit better. Think I'm done? Yes, I'm done. Is this me? This is you?
No.
It's not me.
Thank you so much, Danilo. Okay, the top 3 social media players in the world right now. I need 3 guesses before I tell you who they are. Let's go.
Sports, athletes, individuals who are doing fitness.
No, the platform, sorry. Yeah, in terms of different platforms. Instagram, okay. Anyone else? YouTube, okay. TikTok, okay, cool guys, we're on the right track. At number 1, with a whopping 2.9 billion active users, we have Facebook. At number 2, we have YouTube with 2.5 billion active users. And tie in 3rd place is Instagram and WhatsApp with the 2 billion users as of today. Fun fact, there are 4.6 billion monthly active users on social media in the world right now. Guys, that's over half the world's population. 59% of the world's population is on social media. Cool, that's great to see it in a global context, but let's bring the data home. Okay, so what does it look like in Africa? First place, Facebook, with 271 million active users. Second place, we have YouTube, with 180 million active users. And in 3rd place, we have Twitter, with 24 million active users. Or X. Yes, thank you. Yeah, really interesting that there are 427.5 million active social media users in Africa as of today. Cool, some really interesting facts about the African continent. Nigeria is the #1 country that is most obsessed with social media. They spend 3 hours and 42 minutes every single day on social media. Coming in at 2nd place with just under 5 minutes is South Africa. Very interesting to note that. Okay, everyone knows social media is growing, but where's it going to be? Like, where are we going to be in 2028? Well, we're going to be at 685.7 million active users on social media. Guys, this is the place to be if you're not on it already. And then on average, Africans spend 2 hours and 26 minutes every single day on social media. Cool, South Africa. Okay, so guys, in total, there are 25.8 million monthly active users in South Africa, and every single one of them is on YouTube. How exciting is that? So every single person here that's on social media is probably on YouTube. In 2nd place, we have Facebook with 22.1 million active users, and in 3rd place, we have TikTok with 11.83 million active users. Some interesting fun facts about the South African market. So 97.6% of internet users access social media via their phone. The phone of choice is a Samsung. The second interesting fact is TikTok is the fastest growing platform in the country. And the most searched person on the internet today is Caspar Nyovest, followed by Cyril Ramaphosa, and then Julius Malema. Yeah, interesting, right? I also didn't think so, but very interesting. Okay, cool. So what in the universal forces could be attracting, guys, 4.6 billion people to social media every single month? Does anyone want to take a guess? What is it? Why are we on social media? What's pulling you to it? Yes. I love that. Make you forget about your life and make you happy. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Love that. Try and connect. Exactly. Sense of connection, community. Any guesses? Last guesses? Yes, ma'am? FOMO. Oh, yes. We love FOMO, or JOMO, as the kids are calling it today. The joy of missing out. Exactly. Okay, guys. Well, as you all said, content makes the world go round. So, what is it about content? Have any of you heard of the power of the 4 V's? Anyone? No. Okay, new content. So, what we have is value. As I say here, give the farm away for free. The bigger the value, the bigger the reward. People love value. Your content has to be rooted in value. You need to leave consumers feeling, oh my word, I'm never going to find this anywhere else. I got to save this video. I got to screenshot it. I got to send it to everyone I know. Value will bring you the biggest reward when it comes to social media. And you only have 8 seconds to grab someone's attention. And the way to do it is through value. The second V, vulnerability. There's nothing worse than a brand coming across as one-dimensional. We hate that. We're human beings. We like to see different aspects of you as an individual and as a brand. We like to see emotions, hobbies, passions, what you're getting up to. Vulnerability might not get you the same success as value, but it's crucial to your brand presence and your content on social media. And the best way to do this is through creators. Creators are your network and your door to expressing yourself in diverse and creative ways. The third V is variety. I love to use this example because I think it's a show that's done it so well. The late night shows in America, their success is primarily given to the different segments of the show that they kind of broadcast. At the end of the day, you're speaking to human beings who like to feel different things. And so you want to create content that makes people laugh, that makes people cry, that makes people feel inspired and motivated. That's the best way to do it. Create content that sparks variety, that sparks emotion. Some of us haven't even discovered all the emotion that there is out there and what we can feel as human beings. And sometimes we discover that through different content that we come across. And the last V is virality, aka trend jacking. Be the center of it all. Be in the news. Be creating trends. Take trends that you see online and make it your own. But most importantly, the brands that are doing it so well are the ones that are setting the trends. Okay, cool. Now, the iconic Barbie movie. Has everyone in the room watched the Barbie movie? I hope so. Oh my word. We have someone that hasn't. Anyone else? I'm sure most of you have. Come on, guys. After this, you have to go watch it. From a marketing perspective, you need to know what they did right there. Cool. So how they tapped into the 4 Vs. Number 1, value. Barbie is a movie that's rooted in nostalgia, in childhood, and growing up. So they tapped into that feeling, but they did it in a way, in a new, fresh approach, making it relevant to the 21st century. What else they did was they partnered with 100 brand collaborations. So they were everywhere. Anywhere and everywhere that you looked, Barbie was collaborating and was working with over 100 people. They made sure they were seen, and they made sure that everywhere you looked prior to the movie launching, you were going to know it's a Barbie campaign. Vulnerability. How they did this was Barbie growing up, again, going back to the nostalgia feeling, was very rooted in a time where people and a Barbie was painted to be one very specific image. So what they did to really tap into vulnerability was they really tied into an inclusive and a diverse Barbie image. They partnered with all countries from all over the world that include women from all different aspects, races, cultural, religious point of views, to just showcase the new and fresh approach of a Barbie and what a Barbie looks like in today's kind of reality. So yeah, that's also part of their success, is how they redesigned the image of Barbie, which allowed them to touch and speak to a wider range of people. Then variety. They know we're in the 21st century and there's a lot going on in the internet and in the world right now. So they made sure to tap into different social and cultural norms, but in a way that's relevant to the movie, in a way that was going to allow you to see the movie in a new way, and going to allow you to leave the movie feeling like you were a better equipped individual. And last but not least, virality. I mean, they used Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie as their main actors. They were bound to go viral. But most importantly, they took trends, they made it social, and also they tapped into tech and AI. Did you guys notice that when you searched Barbie on the internet during the time, your Google page would turn pink, as well as other social, really fun, tech-savvy initiatives where allowed them to connect with their consumer base in a way that was really up to date and made them just stand out even more. Cool, I'm going to hand over to Alex now, who's going to talk us through some local examples.
And just before she does, I just want to give you a fun fact, and I know this is going to make us all feel very depressed, but the marketing budget for Barbie was bigger than the production budget. So I think they spent about $156 million on marketing Barbie, right? So yes, not all of us can do it at this scale, but we can learn at a much smaller scale what we can do to learn the same lessons. $156 million spent on marketing. It's more than the production budget. Go look at what your marketing budget is for your TV properties. They're like a tenth of the production budget. It's like someone else's problem. But look what good marketing can do for a film property like that. They obviously grossed more than that in their first night, never mind their afterwards.
Absolutely. But yeah, guys, you can definitely take inspiration from these things. And today I'm going to chat you guys through some local case studies. So as introduced by Danilo a little bit earlier, for those who just joined us, I'll be talking about Deal or No Deal and The Masked Singer, South Africa. These two TV shows recently launched, yeah, we had the privilege of working alongside them just to launch them into the social media stratosphere. So we just thought it would be two really great examples to talk about today. So the first one that I'm going to start with, the first case study, I just wanted to quickly go back to this notion of the omnichannel world, just to kind of like frame this example. So just quickly tracking back, when we talk about the omnichannel environment, we are talking about basically the notion of having all of these different touch points available, right? So touch points being platforms. I'm not talking about just social media platforms, but like radio, TV, mobile phones, smart TVs. That's essentially what creates the omnichannel world. And the spectacular thing about this world is that you have to realize that just your product alone, so the TV show, the film, is not the only interaction that your audiences are now going to have with your brand, right? They actually are going to interact and even expect you to be somewhat present in this omnichannel environment. Maybe not on all platforms, but on some. So you really have to think about how is your brand present there? What stories are you telling in each of these different, forms? And yeah, this all leads to transmedia
anxiety.
Yes,
it leads to anxiety.
That.
We do know it leads to a lot of anxiety in terms of how can I be everywhere and do everything. But think about your user behavior online right now and how you interact with the world around you. You don't just watch a TV show and then never ever speak to it again. There's some kind of interaction with social media, some kind of interaction with billboards, some radio campaigns. There's so many different ways that you as a consumer are interacting with brands and content out there. And so that's why you've got to think about the audiences that watch your shows. They don't just interact with you in this one-way conversation, theater style. They are interacting with you in multiple different ways.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about transmedia storytelling is that not only is this anxiety there, to kind of like make sure that you're present, but you can really use it to your advantage because you can use all of these different spaces to add to the story that is your primary story, right? So if you're telling a specific narrative in your film or in your series, these different worlds allow you to add to it, to tell more, maybe explore certain scenes or elements that audiences would love to know, but what happened there? You can tell that story in a transmedia way on other platforms. And when we look at The Masked Singer, South Africa, essentially what we did here is ensuring that, first of all, content was specifically tailored to platform, because we have to accept and acknowledge the fact that not all content is going to work everywhere. So not just from a softer perspective of like, yeah, but it's not like platform best practice, but even from a story experience perspective. What would be the reason for a group of like audiences to follow one brand on all social media platforms if the content is the same, right? It doesn't make sense. So you need to make sure that from a story and a format practicality perspective, the content is different. And we saw this, or we did this across the Masked Singer. And just an example to show, just quickly looking at technicalities for a second, in the very beginning when we launched, we basically did take one piece of content that was the same to test it across the different platforms just to figure out what works, because also audiences are different, right? And we basically used this 38-second unmasking video that we tested on 3 platforms, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, as well as Instagram Reels, and we found that there was indeed a difference between the performance. So the blue line over there is Facebook, red represents YouTube Shorts, pink represents Instagram Reels, and what you're looking at here is a retention graph, which essentially means how long an audience member kept basically watching that piece of content before it ended. So what we can see here is, of course, a video like that performed super well on Facebook, really kind of like lost minimum people in terms of drop-off. But then when you look at YouTube Shorts and Reels, goodness, drastic difference. And what does this tell us? First of all, no-brainer, definitely do produce more of those type of videos for Facebook. But if you look at Shorts and Reels, there is a conceptual difference that we had to kind of like rethink of what performed better on those platforms. And what we found in this case is that people were looking for, first of all, slightly different editing styles, things that were a little bit more punchier, things that got to the point a little bit faster. And basically, this is the perfect way of how you can use social media to figure out how to communicate with the audiences and what they would like to see more of. And then kind of moving on to some more examples. I think I have 2 or 3 more from Deal or No Deal and the Masked Singer. The first one is just to pause a little bit on the power of full episodes. So this is kind of like a double layer of, let's say, findings. The first one is that listening to the community. When the show launched, before it was available on different streaming platforms to kind of like watch recaps, it was only available on the main broadcast date, right, which was a Saturday, and available on a Thursday for rebroadcast. So we had a lot of comments of people being like, guys, please, where can I find this first episode? I haven't seen it. Like, I need to have a look. So yeah, first of all, listening into the community, we were like, absolutely, guys, we have to do this. So that was like the first checkbox. But second of all, when you do listen to a community, it just shows the rewards that one can reap on platform as well. And I wanted to show you guys what the data looked like on the YouTube side. So the full episode was, of course, released on YouTube, right? First of all, this, by the way, represents just the data from that month, the 1 month that that episode was released. First of all, views. For that month alone, that one episode contributed over 60% of the views for that month. Can you believe it? And then with that, subscribers, the channel grew just under 6,000 new subscribers, which was pretty impressive as well. And then last but not least, it really enhanced monetization opportunities on the channel too, because the retention was so strong, people, for a content piece like that, they stayed there. And they didn't stay there for like 8 or 12 minutes, they stayed there for like almost 40 minutes. So again, just shows what you can really, really earn in terms of just listening into the power of social.
Alex, can I touch on that very quickly?
Absolutely,
if you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
Just to touch on the full episodes thing as well too, we had to fight really hard for this because executives were like, how dare you release, we can't release full episodes for free for people to go and see. Well, you release it on the SABC for one broadcast and then a rebroadcast and everyone gets to see it ever again. And are you saying that the 24 million people who watched, maybe the 1 million people that watched that show on that day, the other 27 million people who have access to, where are they ever going to see this or know about it? And so yes, there were the reason was, well, no, we were going to sell it to a video on demand platform as well too and broadcast it there. And even the video on demand teams were like, we're not worried about free broadcast. It's audience discovery. There are so many people out in the world out there. The young people might watch it on YouTube, discover it and tell their friends about it, tell their family about it, who will then watch it on a traditional platform, find it on the streaming platform. And so releasing full episodes is not a risk to your broadcast. It does not prevent people from watching in their habitual style on your traditional platforms. It helps people get excited. it helps people share the story far and wide, and it helps build anticipation and hype around the content. It is a content discovery, an audience discovery mechanism to release full episodes online. And one thing that Alex didn't mention about listening to the community, load shedding, y'all. Even the first and second broadcast, most people were moaning to be like, I don't care that there's a rebroadcast, there's load shedding in both of those. Where am I going to watch this? And we just recently pulled a report from YouTube in the territory, and they were monitoring the load shedding schedules. At the most severe time of load shedding, audience consumption of YouTube increases, not decreases. Traditional television decreases drastically because people don't have the hard enough power to power their TVs, for example, but they do to have their mobile phones charged up and their 4G to, for example, get access to the internet. YouTube consumption increases at extreme load shedding. And so making the content available to the community prevents people from being disgruntled with the show and the broadcaster because they still get to relive their favorite moments on television in this digital world, which kind of keeps them in the funnel for watching episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to episode 13 on the traditional spheres. If you irritate people and you don't respond to those needs and those demands, they will almost protest against you in some way and refuse to watch and have all these other negative ramifications. So don't see full episodes being made available for free as a hamper or a barrier to your ability to drive audiences to watch the broadcast, because the data says otherwise. Most international companies will tell you they always release the first episode before the broadcast on YouTube for free. It builds hype. It builds excitement, shareability. People are like, oh my God, did you see that episode? It's so great. Go check it out. It's now only available on broadcast there afterwards. The first episode always gets released on YouTube first, and just that episode made the company, just from YouTube advertising, I think something like 50 or 60,000 Rand. Just in advertising revenue from watching the actual episode itself. So I know it is a challenge. I know it's counterintuitive in your mind. Why would I give away for free? But there are enough people out there to watch your content. This is an audience availability and sort of what you call it, a content discovery mechanism. It's not a barrier to watching. There's not only 1 million people available to watch your show. There are 60 million people in South Africa. The SABC 1 speaks to about 23 to 26 I think it's slightly less than that, 24 million people in the country. 1 million might watch your show. What happened to the other 25 million people that are available to you? Those people might discover the show on YouTube, then realize it's on broadcast, then watch it there afterwards. It's not a barrier to your ability to grow audiences traditionally. So get out of that mindset. It's old.
Yeah, and basically, if the audiences weren't there on that broadcast watching, they're on YouTube, and they can keep coming back. So guys, absolutely. And this kind of like leads into just, again, touching on the point of that, the power of community and how it's so important to leverage that from a social media perspective. Before I go into this, I just wanted to say essentially that why it's important is because if you are really making use of this like two-way communication, not responsibility, opportunity, then first of all, you are creating connections, right, with audiences where you can't do that through a TV screen. And audiences that have a connection with a brand, i.e. show, i.e. film, those are the audiences that are going to keep coming back. So that's why it's so important to do that, just to kind of like pause there for a second and put emphasis on that. Okay, but for another case study, looking at Deal or No Deal, this is the last one, and just kind of like what we did for community building, and how we kind of like really were able to hone that community beyond the broadcast is, first of all, making sure that the content that was created and the conversations that we encouraged on platform connected with people, resonated with people, and created a space for them to come to discuss things that they saw on the show. And you guys will be so surprised by, how much emotion is sometimes poured out in those comments, how people are generally feeling connected to the contestants who win big amounts. And all of this came out here. And just a few touch points of what we kind of shared from a content perspective. Number one, behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, not in a traditional sense, like don't necessarily about how the show was made, but just behind the scenes moments that didn't make it to the episode, maybe like the off-screen reactions of the contestant, the off-screen conversations that Katlego, the host, and the contestant is having. That stuff really did or does win people over. Secondly, Raeesa touched on this in the 4 Vs, but raw emotion, absolutely. Just making sure that we're sharing content bits and pieces that replicate that and that show that, even if it was moments that were in the episode, emphasize them and show them again. People are human. We are all here for a form of emotional connection at the end of the day. Like me, I'm so excited to be here, emotion. And brand humanization through relatability. So this is just making sure that you are incorporating human topics into your conversations. Are we talking about how frustrated we are about load shedding? Are we talking about payday? So yeah, those type of things we found worked really well. Contestant backstories. This goes back to transmedia storytelling, so adding to stories that aren't in your episode by creating bigger connections with the contestants that are on the show. That's what kept people coming back, and it leads to emotion, the sharing of emotion. And then last but not least, I think this is like the third time I've mentioned it, but just that two-way communication line, right? And a case study on that is, at a stage, we got like this flood of comments of people asking so many questions around, guys, what is up with this blue suit? Why is it always the same suit? Is there no like production budget? Shame, like can we not help out just to kind of like change it up, or what's the reason behind it? So essentially, essentially, of course, there are practical reasons for it, but instead of like giving a black and white answer, something very dull, we decided to, again, create a story around it, and that's where more transmedia storytelling opportunities came in. So yeah, we created a content piece that basically spoke about the suit, and Katlego, the host, did a voiceover for this reel, spoke about the suit as, you know, it just not being a piece of clothing. It is an armor. It is an armor to fight the battles against the banker. And it is a uniform that we put on every day for every show to kind of signify and, you know, bring hope. And yeah, to end off, how the goodness will you remember all of this, and what exactly are we trying to say at the end of the day? So we thought of like I think it's called an acronym. So essentially, when you get asked about whether social media is more than just marketing, you'd say, of course, OFC, except with a silent T, because I couldn't figure out a different word. But essentially, what these four letters stand for, O is for the omni-channel world, right? Position yourself in that world, understand where you play, understand where all these platforms sit in your marketing plan. F is 4 Vs, leverage the power of those 4 Vs when you are creating content. T, the silent T, is for transmedia storytelling, and C is community. Just always make sure that you are keeping that two-way communication line open and listening to what your audiences have to say about your show. And that's us. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, we've still got some good time, and so I really would like to engage in a conversation about maybe some of the challenges you're facing or the ideas that you have in the space, and I'm very open to receiving those questions. There we go, a nice roving microphone. So I see there are a couple in the room now. We'll come to those. As soon as he's done, raise your hands again, and we'll go first come, first serve.
Hi, it's Justin from MediaHeads 360.
Hey, Justin.
Quick question. I mean, you talk about measuring sentiment. In South Africa and Africa, we obviously have the challenge of a lot of different languages. Have those tools been adapted, and can you actually measure sentiment in the different languages? And then the second question is YouTube Premium. It has the biggest distribution base ever. They have all of these tools. What is YouTube Premium doing for the producers to come and say, listen, we back ourselves, we have all of these tools, we can monetize it, and we can pay you the kind of money that you need for a production?
Cool. So there's two questions in that. I'll tackle the first one about sentiment first. You know, we were concerned about this as well too. We are a primarily English-speaking company. We have a lot of different languages in the business itself, but in the sort of digital strategy and platform management side, a lot of our teams were English-speaking. And we're obviously broadcasting on an SABC1, which we would have assumed would have had quite a large, diverse audience of different languages. But there is a bit of a conversation to be had between the broadcaster, the production house, the person that owns the rights to the concept, and ourselves as the digital teams. Even the SABC would say that primarily of their content that's appearing here, it needs to be English first, but they have a mandate to produce sort of a certain percentage of the content needs to be in said vernacular. And so what we did is we try to create content in various vernacular languages as well too. And the platforms, although they're a bit clunky in the South African territory, we mean nothing to the global context, if that makes sense. So the features and tools available to you to close caption in various different other languages in South Africa is hard, but we did it anyway. We allowed the verbal content that was in vernacular to remain in vernacular, and we subtitled in English. And so what we would generally do with sentiment, we're not meaning it in like a listening tool perspective. We don't just get a sentiment report from platform and then say, here's your sentiment. We are measuring sentiment. We're scrolling through all the comments, the actual data that comes through, and we're saying to ourselves, what is the general trend? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it a lot of people? Is it one person? And that's how we're measuring sentiment. So we've never really struggled on the vernacular side, even with an audience that you'd imagine primarily speak vernac on the day-to-day. We really didn't struggle with that at all. And then the biggest challenge that we had to do, which we solved quite quickly, was just ensuring that there was a consultant in all the different languages available to us, and then they just telling us what the sentiment is about indeed. So that's not a concern. I don't really understand your question about premium, because YouTube Premium, you kind of maybe referring to YouTube Red, that sort of like original productions living on YouTube, correct? Yeah, that is no longer a priority for the platform. I don't think they're necessarily investing that heavily into original productions for digital broadcasts like that, and I think it's primarily because there is now a lot of VOD available for people to broadcast on. I also wouldn't consider that in this territory. The audience uptake is relatively slow, and YouTube Premium does not diminish your ability to earn revenue from platform. In fact, the penetration of YouTube Premium is tiny in this country. I mean, we're sitting, even on the continent itself, only a very small group of people have paid to have no advertising. But what you don't know is that you're also able to share in that advertising revenue. So even if you're a creator who primarily is being watched by premium, people who've subscribed to premium, you still share in that revenue because they're paying a monthly fee. What the content that they use is pulled together and distributed to the creators whose content were watched by a premium user. So I'd have to go and speak to platform about what their view is on YouTube Red moving forward and that idea of original productions. But to be honest, as you can see, zeitgeist-wise, there's nothing being spoken about it. It's not a platform of priority. But I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question, unless you want to... Yeah. It does. It gives
If you
more
have the
control.
tools to monetize
Yeah.
and you back your technology, and we know how expensive production is.
Yes.
You know, 60,000 Rand a month is great, pays one person's salary, but
Yes.
it doesn't get us
Yes,
a
of course.
production. So I'm just thinking there's a broader conversation for YouTube to have in the space of Netflix and all the other streaming platforms.
Totally. And I see it as a business, right? Everybody, like the reason why people take it to Netflix or to Showmax, for example, as a platform is because they have amassed an audience already. You can speak to them directly. On YouTube, you've got to amass an audience first. And so you can't just suddenly wake up overnight and have an audience. And so it does add another layer of skill to your own. That's why these companies charge you so much money to broadcast on their platforms, because we have the audience already. YouTube takes away that layer and forces you to create your own audience, which does require a much broader strategy of how we're going to do that, and that's always very uncertain. We want certainty. You know, I just want to produce the thing, make it look pretty, you broadcast it. But yeah, good point. There were some other questions around. I think your hand was up second, and then I'll go to that side of the room. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Moira Roger from Magnify Digital. We have spoke to you the other day. We have a very similar company. We call it Audience Development, and we do this across North America. I think you guys did another amazing presentation, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
My comment is, so much of what you're talking about is absolutely applicable to North America, but the one interesting difference is that transmedia as a term in North America sort of got hijacked a few years ago. So working with North American companies, it's not necessarily a plus to talk about transmedia. And it's really unfortunate, interesting that here that term is still used, it seems, but...
By us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, I guess I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment that it's just an interesting difference that
Yeah.
it can be also kind of seen as a negative because of what happened a few years ago.
What happened a few years ago?
Well, there's a couple of things. In Canada, transmedia was required. It was rich in substantial content. And so these amazing transmedia projects were developed, and no marketing money was allowed to drive traffic to them. So you had these hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes transmedia projects, and audiences didn't go to them. And so the funders said, some of them said, it doesn't work. Like, we can't
Yeah.
put our money into that. Well,
Yeah.
there was no chance, no hope for these projects. And in the States, it became a sort of an art form that also got derailed. So it's not seen as the business strategy so much.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what happened there.
No, that is very interesting, and I do see it as like a challenge in the film and TV space. We use transmedia storytelling more in the brand building side because all brands are trying to think about the customer journey. How do our customers interact with us, and where do they get funneled to next, and how are they interacting with us? And the TV world doesn't fit much different to that. Where are audience discovering us? They might watch the show and then find us online. Or they find us online first, then they watch the show. These customer journeys all need to be thought about, and transmedia storytelling is how you tell the narrative. But I'm more interested in the omni-channel environment than I am about the narrative itself. The narrative is more about a story. The omni-channel environment is where are people interacting, what platforms do they have access to, and how do they find us, and how do we drive them to a business. That's more my interest. But
Yeah, and omni-channel and multi-platform are certainly terms we use.
Yeah.
But anyway,
thank you.
there you go.
There was another question there, I think it was. And then I'll come back to you, man.
Sorry. I'm a final year student at City Varsity, and with being neurodivergent, I always have something in the background to help me focus on what I'm working. And something I have picked up in more global space, especially for mystery series and certain video games, they would pre-release content to influencers and theorizers to build that conversation. Our audience, of course, is a lot smaller, but is that a viable thing at the moment in the South African market?
I'd say absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've been having this fight as well too. The role of influencers, especially on your YouTube kind of platforms, if they get seeded something or get given information or get given details that nobody else knows about, they're able to create, again, a bit of hype and awareness and intrigue amongst an audience that you're not currently reaching or speaking to in an environment that's already trusted. I already trust you to talk about TV shows and what's happening and what's out there and what's new and trending. So when you talk about this show, it must be reputable. I'm more likely to go and watch the show. It's absolutely still relevant. Maybe at a smaller scale, but still very, very relevant. Yeah. Ma'am.
Thanks so much, guys, for a stellar presentation. That's one of my students, and afterwards I'm going to tell him just whatever they did with that PowerPoint, just do that. That's like PowerPoint gold. My question is about adapting some of these philosophies or approaches to feature filmmaking, because you spoke a lot about television, and that episodic format obviously lends itself to making use of the gaps between episodes and creating that feedback loop, whereas with a standalone feature it might seem harder to kind of create that environment where you're communicating with your audience on an ongoing basis. And been doing a lot of research into crowdfunding at the moment and how to use social media to help with crowdfunding to bring audiences in while you're still in development, as opposed to that kind of afterthought that you're speaking about, as opposed to just treating it as okay, we've made the movie, now let's market it on Instagram. So I just wanted to, I guess, get your thoughts on that, using these tools for feature films, how to adapt them, and is it being used in the South African space?
Perfect. I'll take a first stab, and then I'd love my team to also share some insight with you. But you hit the nail on the head. We chose not to go into the film environment here because we knew that most of our case studies were going to be in the TV world and rather be focused. But you're absolutely right. The one thing that we encourage on social media for feature filmmaking is testing content. You never get a chance to test this massive project that's going to cost you lots of money to produce. You never know if anybody is actually going to like it in any way, unless you start, for example, seeding information, trying things out, seeing what works. Social media is this constant test and measure environment about what people like to see and what they're saying about stuff. And so I would say probably in the feature film world, you're right. The social media world fits in before production as opposed to after production and marketing thereafterwards. And so, for example, I know they used it as an example, the suit scenario. That piece of content, although it solved the question and it helped us address something, it didn't perform very well digitally. It wasn't like the highest performing video digitally. We knew that there was something else that people were interested in content-wise, and that is in fact the thing that's going to drive mass viewership. So I would say from a testing theory perspective, social media allows you to try examples, try content, see what's working for people, what they're saying about it, and then use that to influence the actual creation of the film or the feature, rather than only the marketing phase thereafterwards. But I see Alex disagrees a little bit.
Oh, no, not at all. I just wanted to say that basically you can still apply the same principles, just maybe from like a duration perspective. You probably would have your campaign or your marketing period shorter and not necessarily continuous. So kind of looking at it in a more condensed way. And then also to say that for anything that you do post-production, excuse the pun, you can still use whatever those sentiments are to inform your next project. So yeah, I'd say definitely still take inspiration from it. Maybe just look at it from like a time frame perspective in terms of the differences of what and when. Yeah.
Cool. I've just been given the signal that we're well over time. The next session needs to get started, but we will still be here for your questions. So please do bring them to us. We'll step outside on the left here. But thanks so much for joining today, guys. Enjoy the next session.
Thanks so much.